everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Career Chats. I am Natasha, part of your Space Club Mission Control, and we are so excited to welcome all of you, our Space Club students and teams participating in the New Worlds Await You Habitat Design and Technology Competition. All right, so today I have a really exciting guest. We are talking with a NASA engineer, and you guys asked some really awesome questions. So let me introduce our speaker. So today we have Erick Castillon, a systems engineer at NASA Johnson Space Center. He has a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from the University of Texas at San Antonio. He has also interned at NASA 8 times, and he now works with private companies to support transportation to the International Space Station while keeping our astronauts safe. So let me bring him on. Hi, Erick. How are you doing?
Hey, good morning. Oh, good afternoon, everyone.
Or wherever and whenever you're watching this, right?
Hello from everyone across the world.
That's right. Are you in your cubicle at NASA?
I am legit in my cubicle at NASA Johnson Space Center here in Houston, Texas, away from the humidity.
Oh yeah. And what are we seeing behind you? Can you tell us, like, what is that the model of the ISS?
Yeah, so behind me is a full Lego set of the International Space Center. If you ever get a chance to buy one of these, I highly recommend it. Not an advertisement, by the way. It's just something so cool, by the way.
Not
And you might be
sponsored.
wondering, why do I have a beaver here? Well, why not? Little beaver.
And that's, if anybody's from Texas, isn't that Bucky?
It is a Bucky's beaver.
And that's just like a really crazy awesome gas station, which sounds ridiculous probably to non-Texans, but I
If
approve
you're
of
ever
it.
visiting Texas, it is a rite of passage for you to be considered a Texan, for you to go into a Buc-ee's and be transformed.
Yeah,
It is amazing.
agreed. All right. Well, let's just jump in because we got so many questions. And you told me before that you have stories to tell. So
Oh yeah.
I'm going to just start here with, before we get to all the cool stuff you're doing at NASA, kind of your journey pathway to STEM. So let's start with this question from Galactic Empire, North Carolina. All right, Erick, how did you get introduced to NASA or space?
I love the name, Galactic Empire. Okay, so fifth grade, it was like 2007. We had a field trip to JS Johnson Space Center. From here on forward, I'm going to refer to as JSC. It just means Johnson Space Center. It's just the acronym. We took a field trip to Houston to visit JSC, and we were walking on the high bay to see where all the robotics are. And if you ever get a chance to tour JSC, please do it. It is just an amazing experience for you to even like see mission control or like uh, robotics station, or even the rockets themselves. Anyways, we were walking on the catwalk where the robotics are held, and like I don't know why, but like I didn't know that robotics was like a thing at the time, and I just told myself, you know what, I'm gonna do my best to work here at NASA. I don't care if I'm a janitor. I will gladly clean the floors for whoever is working on these robots, and that's where the inspiration began. Um, then I wanted to become a basketball player, so that didn't work out. So eventually, it all comes full circle.
Well, let me switch to this next question about how old were you when you wanted to be a systems engineer? So you were like, I want to work in space. I could be cleaning the floors. But when did it switch to more of engineering?
So there's a story behind that.
Okay.
I was 25 when I had said I want to be a systems engineer. So after I'd done all my rotations or internships with NASA, I've wanted to be, a flight controller in mission control, or a robotics engineer in what we call Building 9, which is home to all the robotics are. I wanted to be one of those two, engineers. When I got the job offer for a systems engineer, first off, I had no idea what it was at the time. Second, I'm like, well, it's not one of the other two options, so I'm not really too, you know, I was surprised to say the least.
Hmm.
And then the more I got into the job, the more I learned about it, the more of how much of a critical part systems engineers play within the entire ISS program, much less the agency of NASA. Like the more like I want to, be integrated with, safety and systems engineering, the more like I want to, learn. And so yeah, how old was I? 25.
That's pretty cool that you like know that. But before, I guess you have an engineering degree. And so I skipped this question, but I want to know what made you want to go to college to get a mechanical engineering degree. And this is the Martian ladies in North Carolina.
Another story behind this. So in sophomore year of high school, uh, I didn't know what I wanted to do, to be quite honest. In fact, I wasn't doing too well in school. I was barely getting by. Like C's and D's were all I was getting
Mm.
as a sophomore, including algebra 2 and chemistry. And then a year later, when I got to my junior year, I still had no idea what I wanted to do. And I kept asking myself, if I have no idea what I want to do, then why the heck am I still in school? Well, there was this big old Canadian man uh, who just saw me like, depressed basically. And he said, "What are you doing?" And uh, basically I just said, "Well, I don't know. I'm about to, drop out." And he said, "Oh, is that so? Then come to my class and we'll see what we can do." Um, so was going to drop out, and then that day happened. When I visited his classroom was underground, like 10 feet underneath the school.
Oh,
And as soon as you open those doors, all you see were rockets lined after lined across the ceiling. This class was not even like a classroom. It was more like a machine shop, really. Like it was like half a football field big. It was pretty darn wide. Um, so when I first saw that, I was like, oh heck no, I'm not doing this, because I have so low of a self-esteem issue back then that I just didn't believe I could do like, rockets, much less a tiny one like that big. Um, Over time, and I dive more as we go into more of these questions. Over time, I started to, gain more confidence, gain more of an appreciation for engineering, which later transformed into a love for engineering, which later in turn wanted me to become more passionate about engineering. And that's why I chose mechanical engineering, because it is the closest thing that I can get to an aerospace degree at UTSA, University of Texas San Antonio. They are a growing school. They're doing pretty well right now. So if you ever want to do a tour of UTSA, please do. Uh, Guarantee you guys will like it. But at the time, they didn't have an aerospace engineering degree. They only had mechanical. So I just said, let's do mechanical.
hmm.
And now, ever since I started a rocket club at UTSA, they've been trying to establish more of an aerospace engineering presence there ever since. So I guess you can say I influenced UTSA as well.
Nice. And
So
what's
yeah.
this picture here of where did you build this rocket?
So this picture was taken um, right after I graduated high school, and no, not high school, like 2016, I think, is when I took that picture. That was
Okay.
like 2 years later. That was my first ever mile high rocket.
Wow.
Basically, a mile high rocket is a rocket that's capable of taking a 1 pound payload to an altitude of 1 mile. That was my first one. I went on to make two more, and that one was my first one. So I asked my rocket teacher, who is still there today, hey, can I take the rocket home for some pictures? He was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And so it was kind of funny seeing people like drive by my neighborhood with seeing a giant 9 foot tall missile,
Yeah.
in the front yard, just casually there with someone holding it. But
I'm picturing like how you got that home if it was like strapped on a car, like
so
driving down the
these things
road.
were so you can take the rocket apart into like three different
Ah,
stages.
got it.
So that helped.
That's really cool. And I love that story of you were, you know, a lot of kids think that you have to be a straight A student in math and science and like acing everything, or you have no chance of working at NASA someday. So I appreciate you sharing that and that you struggled with some of the subjects and it took that teacher to kind of wake you up. So was it this passion and drive for space that kind of changed? Like, did math and science become easier? Did you still have to struggle through those classes?
So it's funny how much a class influences you, like depending on the class and the teacher, obviously. Um, for me, uh, I didn't really do well just because like I couldn't, relate. I couldn't apply what I was, learning in the classroom. Like, yeah, you can learn all you want about, chemistry, but what's the point of learning it if you're not going to, apply it or use it? So when I took the rocket class with my teacher, his name's Mr. Lang, so I'm calling him that from now on. When I took Mr. Lang's class, I found an outlet or a method to apply what I learned in the classroom into something that I actually care about, rockets in this case. So from there on forth, like whenever we're talking about statistics or mathematics, physics, or like general like application of STEM, I think, okay, how can I apply this into a rocket? How can I apply this to a car even? Mostly with, rockets because, that's my passion. So for me, I found my passion and I was able to apply what I learned to that passion, learn more about that passion, and it just kept, it basically became it basically became a feedback loop.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it was like you just needed to know the why. Like, why do I need to
Exactly.
care about all
And
this
actually,
stuff?
exactly. And as a kid, like, all you're going to ask about is why? Why am I doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we
Mhm.
learning this? You don't really get those answers. And
Right.
with what I like about rocketry is that you can get, those answers applied. Now, it does not have to be rocketry. It could be, model airplanes. It could be drones. It could be cars. It could be whatever. As long as you find your passion that you're able to apply that knowledge into, and you just find
Yeah.
yourself a very good outlet.
All right. Well, let's move now into what you do. So you mentioned earlier that you've interned 8 times at
Yeah.
NASA. So they want to know, this is Dream Team in Nevada. Was it hard interning at NASA? And what did you have to do during all these internships? Maybe give us like the highlights.
Yeah, so I started interning in the summer of 2015 over at Stennis Space Center. That is in Mississippi. So there are 9 NASA facilities throughout the nation. There's a few in Texas, California, Mississippi, Maryland, Ohio, and all over the place, really. But that was my first internship, and that one was the hardest one I've had because, like, I'm coming in as a freshman, and all the other interns are like either taking their masters, they're taking their doctoral degrees already, or they're just experienced, in thermodynamics or fluid mechanics. I had no idea what those two things were at the time, so that was a challenge. So that was the hardest part about interning at NASA is that you, you don't sometimes you'll come in like a little bit too young, but at the same time like they will help you, like they as in like fellow interns, your friends and coworkers, they will help you like capture that knowledge
Hmm.
over time. And that was just like I felt like I was being fed to the wolves, but eventually
It
that
worked
got
out.
all settled. But what I do for interning, I can answer that in 4 pieces.
Okay.
I was a design engineer for rockets and testing rockets. Then I was a robotics engineering intern for both Johnson Space Center and Armstrong Flight Research Center over in outside of Los Angeles, California. I was a test engineer for what is now the Space Launch System. Uh, that was also in California. And then the last internships I did were flight controllers, which a flight controller, if you don't know what one is, those are the people who are uh, staffed in mission control, which there's a picture of right now.
Mhm.
There will be a flight controller in each one of those stations or chairs, and they're responsible for a particular aspect of the ISS. It could be the internal thermal control system or the external thermal control system, the electrical power system, communications, talking to the astronauts. That's Capcom, or just even talking to other capsules before before they dock or get berthed with the ISS. There's many flight controllers who do a variety of things. We have that for the Space Launch System. We have that for Boeing. We have that for SpaceX. We have that for SLS, and the list goes on. But ISS is probably the biggest of the
Yeah.
customers.
And so then moving to the present day, you're a systems engineer. What's something you're working on? This is from Awesome Knots in Colorado.
So as a systems engineer, I'm doing three things really at the moment. One is assisting with the Japanese to get their brand new cargo vehicle called HTVX, getting ready for them to launch to the ISS. That's probably coming up next year or this year, I hope. But I'm basically helping them get their vehicle ready to be approved before they go launch to the ISS. Second thing is I do just the exact same thing before with a private company called Sierra Space. Sierra Space is a somewhat of a small uh, space company over in Colorado. Um, and they're also trying to develop it's very similar to a space shuttle, really. Like they're making a very miniature space shuttle per se, and they're launching it, same thing as a cargo vehicle to the ISS. And then the third thing I do is I assist in payloads for getting their payload ready um, before they go to the ISS. The catch, though, is what I am helping these three entities with. I'm helping them get their design, ready to be safe and approved whenever they use a computer. So if a payload uses a computer, I got to make sure that whatever like system is attached to this computer is not going to blow up, or it's not going to hurt someone or put the ISS at risk. That's what I do for these three entities.
That sounds like an important job. And
Oh yeah.
let me ask this follow up. This is Shooting Stars in Alabama. They're like, so since you're a systems engineer, when the astronauts need help in space and their control panel is not working, do you help with that, or do you do something else?
Oddly specific question,
Yeah.
but I like that a lot. Just a little side topic. I just came back from Alabama for 2 weeks over at
Nice.
Marshall Space Flight Center. Again, beautiful center. If you want to take a tour of it, by all means, go ahead. It's so worth it. Anyways, to answer your question, with the control panel, not necessarily. That is handled by a different set of engineers who are concentrated in that particular system. Where we come in as computer systems engineers, we come in whenever there has been a fault or a problem with a system or a spaceship or capsule that had a problem with its computers, and that caused it to do something bad. That's put it very plain and simple. Here's an example. So one day in August, and I can actually use this. In August of last year, we had MLM come up from the Russians, and they were about to dock into the ISS. So this is MLM. They were about to dock, and then all of a sudden, when they docked, the computers on board MLM basically said, "Okay, time to turn on." And so when those computers turned on, they activated the thrusters for the MLM. That's a bad day if you want to activate the thrusters when you're docked.
Oh
So what happened is that the ISS did a barrel roll while
gosh.
this thing was docked as soon as it touched. Um, keep in mind, we want the ISS to be safe. We do not want it to become an actor for the next Matrix movie. We do not want it to do barrel rolls.
No.
So that's what happened. When that happened, my group got called up and got asked the question, "Hey, why did this happen?" So we worked with a variety of other engineers and concentrations, and even with the Russians, to figure out what exactly happened. Eventually, we came out with what happened and produced a report. Produced that to the Russians, to the agency, and then all to the corresponding stakeholders within NASA. And
Hmm.
that's one example of what we did. There's a
Yeah.
bunch of other ones, but that's probably the most publicly famous one.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. And I think that's such a cool aspect of your job, though, is understanding it's in the word, right? Systems engineering, how it all integrates and all these different pieces. And we've had past guests that work on like one very specific part, and you're kind of like the big picture person. Is that
Yep,
like a good way to describe it?
that is a perfect way of describing it. So normally, a design engineer would focus on one part of a bigger picture. Now that's their part. That's what they were hired for. But systems engineers, project managers, and overall management, they look at what's going on entirely. And if something's going wrong with part A, then they're going to have to notify to part A, hey, you're doing this wrong. This is going to cause part B and C to do something bad because of what's going on in part A.
Right.
Um, and that's what my job's trying to, to do, like to prevent, any safety thing, any unsafe things from happening.
Yeah. And so we had a couple more questions here about your work. So this is Mariplow in Florida. How did you support transportation to the ISS while keeping the astronauts safe for private companies? So you kind of touched on some of this.
Kind of. So I also help a little bit with SpaceX whenever I'm needed, but to
That's
sum it
cool.
up, um, if another cargo mission or a crew mission is coming up on the itinerary or the schedule, um, my team would talk with the private company, in this case SpaceX, and we'll look over at their system. We'll look over like their computers and make sure that their system is not going to hurt other systems. And once we determine, okay, this vehicle is safe, let's launch. We give our approval to the ISS program. ISS program is going to look at that and they're going to see that this vehicle is indeed safe for launch. The vehicle would then move from California to Texas to Florida, and from Florida, that's where it'll launch. And I think last night, Crew 4 launched as well, and that's
Yeah,
one of the vehicles we helped.
that's awesome. Can you explain a little bit here? This is the next question about how NASA works with private companies, because I think there's a lot of confusion. We always think, oh, NASA, they're the ones doing everything. And then all of a sudden we're hearing about, SpaceX and all these others. Like, well, how does that all work together?
Good question. Very good question, actually. So where NASA comes in with the whole private company thing is we're trying to establish a space industry per se. Like we're trying to commercialize space in a way. For 60 years already, NASA has been like the de facto, leader in space for so long. I mean, just look what we've done. We made a space station. We made both an American space station and an international space station. We landed astronauts on the moon many times. We also were able to create a space shuttle, which is easily one of the most complex uh, space vehicles ever created. Um, and now we're working our way to Mars. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to establish an industry from low Earth orbit, which is just orbiting the Earth uh, entirely, and we're trying to establish an industry in that area so that we can focus our resources on working towards the moon, towards Mars, and beyond.
Hmm.
Uh, we've been orbiting low Earth orbit for 20 years now, and what NASA is trying to do is saying is, okay, we've done our part here. Let's give this, this let's create an industry out of this. So now we have, companies like SpaceX and Boeing who are creating these space vehicles uh, to not just ferry astronauts to the ISS, but also, provide a ride for tourists. Even there's Axiom who's trying to create their very own space station that would be the first commercial space station ever in human history, and that would be an amazing feat if that happens. There's so many other things going on right now, and right now in this era, we are about to see the golden era of space commercialization unfold, and that all stemmed from NASA.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think that's really great for kids and all the students, in Space Club is just keep an eye on the news, follow all the NASA channels. I feel like every rover on the Mars has its own like Twitter feed and like there's so much cool stuff that you can just follow and watch
Yep.
and be part of.
Yep. And all I gotta say on that part is we're just getting started. Like there
Ooh.
are many other things that we got planned for not just for the space industry we're trying to create, but also for the moon, the Mars, and we're also trying to establish new robotic capabilities to create rovers and my favorite part, a drone, a drone capable of flying in another planet. We're doing that right now with Mars. Um, if you've seen the recent Martian rover, I
Mhm.
forgot what was the name of it. Uh, it had a passenger. The passenger was a drone. It
Mhm.
is the first drone to ever fly in another planet, and that is just amazing. And we're going to do that again with, I believe, Titan is the other uh, moon planet or planet moon that we're trying to fly in. Yeah, there's more to come. Just stay tuned.
That's awesome. Okay, well, let me switch here to your life outside of work. So it seems like you are doing all things space and NASA, but Apollo 18 wants to know, do you have any cool talents? As if
Apollo
being
18.
an engineer at NASA isn't cool enough.
Hey, Apollo 18. I thought you guys were canceled, but anyways, cool talents. So outside of NASA, I let my engineer shine outside as well by creating PCs or personal computers. I build computers basically.
Huh,
I build computers for my family, for my friends. I do it for my neighbors sometimes. Also, I like to play guitar. I have 3 guitars currently. Uh, just been playing since I was what, 6th grade. So I do that off to the
that's
side.
pretty cool.
Uh, I have a very weird habit of hiking for days without like needing to rest, and that is just that scares me a little bit because the picture you see on the right is a picture
Mhm.
I took when I was in Green Lake, uh, in outside of Seattle, Washington. Uh, to get there, you had to hike up to like what 10 miles. Normally, people would actually camp out there and before going back. Well, I didn't. I went out there and stayed there for a few hours and then hiked back at night. For those who are curious, no, do not ever hike at night. That is never a good idea. I just wanted to go home. So that was my reasoning. Yeah, other than that, it was a very beautiful experience. I mean, just look at Green Lake. Like the lake
That
is
was
literally
beautiful.
green.
Yeah, it's cool. Okay, well, I have one more set of questions here at the end. And I think this is kind of my favorite part where we do the rapid fire questions. So you have not seen these questions before. I'm only going to
Okay.
give you about 20 seconds per question. Are you ready?
Let's
Yeah,
do it.
buttons for good luck. Okay. How long did it take you to earn your degree?
6 years.
Pass that question. Why did you intern at NASA 8 times?
Because I wanted to travel as a college student, and NASA was the only way for me to travel, and I did it. Do not
And you
regret
didn't
it.
have to pay for it, right?
Exactly.
Ah. What was your favorite place to intern at and
Ooh.
why?
Armstrong Flight Research Center outside of Los Angeles. For one, it's inside an Air Force base, so there's an entire there's that to explore. You're also close to Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Malibu. I totally took advantage of going to LA every weekend. Totally
Ooh,
recommend it.
that's good a reason. What was the coolest thing you did while you interned at NASA?
I was a test conductor for SLS, and unofficially, according to SLS program managers, I am the youngest test conductor in history. So,
What?
woo.
That's pretty awesome. I love it. Okay, how many astronauts have you helped transport to the ISS?
8.
Nice. Quick math. You pass. You win. You win rapid fire. All right. Well,
Sweet.
thank you for answering all of these questions. And if you have a couple minutes, I'm going to keep you around because I want to show you what our Space Club teams have been working on. You ready?
Sweet. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So our kids are on a mission to moon or a mission to Mars. And so here we have mission to moon. You can see a video clip. This is actually a team in Australia. This is some of their designs. And this is a roller coaster, and they're cheering for having completed that test. And we're showing them how changes in acceleration are similar to what astronauts experience when they're training on the Vomit Comet. All right. And
I
then
love
our
that.
second clip is mission to Mars, and we're reaching the end here on this Mars mission. It's 7 transporting samples. So I'm going to show you a video where kids are building this rubber band rover to transport rock samples. You ready?
Oh yeah.
All right. All right. What'd you think?
Wow, that you guys are clearly doing more than I was when I was y'all's age. That's amazing.
Right. That's some pretty impressive designs. I love to see kind of their own unique takes on this challenge. So awesome job, students. And so, Eric, what's going to happen next is the fun part, which is we're going to do a raffle.
Ooh,
So we have
nice.
you here representing NASA. So I had to give away some NASA swag, and it's almost summer. So you can take a refreshing drink with you with this NASA logo. And since you're doing rovers, I thought, hey, it's a pretty cool solar solar powered rover. There we go. And you could actually use a soda can as the body of the rover, which I thought was kind of cool.
Pretty neat.
Okay, so what happens is I'm actually going to spin this wheel, and there's all the teams that submitted, and every single student on the team will get both of these prizes, your very own. All right, so this is our picker wheel. We have over 100 submissions. Best of luck, teams. Let's do it. Who's it going to be? All right, congratulations to the Dragon Slayers. Awesome job to all the teams. All right, so we're going to get that prize to that team. And as we wrap up here, Eric, thank you so much for joining us here on Career Chats. Any final words for all the students watching?
Well, first off, thanks for having me. And also, it doesn't matter where you are, where you're from, or how tall you are, what gender or what race you are. It does not matter who you are. You can always be an engineer. It's just a matter of finding that passion. Never thought I would be working at NASA at the age of 13 or 14, 15, but yet here I am 10 years later and loving it, every single bit of it. I hope to see you guys here in JSC or wherever else at NASA. Other than that, at Astra.
I love it. Well, thank you again, Eric, and great job to all the students. I've just loved seeing all of your submissions, and I'll see you again on the next one. Bye-bye.